let's start with a little disclaimer. I'm going to be talking to you about failure. I'm going to be talking to you about my thoughts about failure. They may not necessarily be your thoughts. They may not be the solution, but it's just something that I was thinking about over the past few months and that I wanted to share with you. I am a recovering software developer. I've been part of many teams, many products, many companies, and many failures. And this is based on my experiences. So let's start with the good news first. Everything fails, all of the time. Everyone fails all of the time. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, that's good. Let's start with a little definition on what is failure. Failure in the context of today is not about a lack of effort. It's not about a lack of doing something. It's not about being idle. It's about doing something and then going into, well, as the Oxford Dictionary says, a lack of success. The omission of an expected or required action. Action or a state of not functioning. That's what the definition is of failure if you look it up in any random dictionary, whether it's English or any other modern Western language. And that's the key thing. In our culture, in modern Western society, we equate failures to mistakes, errors, things not going right. A safety scientist called James Reason, he wrote about failure as a term that encompasses all those occasions in which a planned sequence of mental or physical activities fails to achieve its intended outcome, and when these failures cannot be attributed to some intervention or chance. Or, if you look up failure online, these are some of the synonyms that you will find. And as you read those synonyms, you realize that the way we in modern Western society see failure is with a very strong negative association, a very strong negative charge, right? It's about tragedies, it's about frustrations, it's about false steps, it's about faux pas, it's about sinking ships and everything associated with that. The language associated with failure is very negative. Now, this means that failure in our society, especially modern Western society, is considered to be very negative. Failure is associated with pain. And humans, and we're not the only mammals wired that way, but we are wired to avoid pain, right? We bump our knee into some object, and then the next time we try not to do it. Because we're wired biologically to do that, right? Pain is negative experience, which triggers us to avoid that situation or that problem the next time around, so that we have a better chance of surviving. Unfortunately, psychologically, that also translates, right? If we experience psychological pain or stress, we will try to avoid that situation the next time around, which means that failure is a frustrating and painful experience. And our response as humans is to push this away, to put it off doing something that we experienced failure with in the past and put that off for as long as possible. Now, I consider failure not to be the opposite of success, right? Those are not two opposing sides. They're not two sides of the same coin. Elon Musk said in one of his better days, success is one of the possible outcomes. Now, that has not aged very well, but let's not stick with Elon for too long. He is right on that, though. Success is only one of the possible outcomes. It's not the only outcome or the one outcome that you should strive for. So what is then the difference between failure and success? Is there a difference between failure and success? Well, the problem is the difference between failure and success is not always apparent. As a matter of fact, it is usually not apparent. It only becomes apparent after the fact, or maybe long after what happened. And the thing is that basically everything that we do as humans, as flawed beings, there's almost no action that can be made to look flawed or failed in the misleading light of hindsight. So looking back, everything that we do, almost everything that we do, can be seen as some sort of idiotic action or a mistake or an error. I consider failure to be an opportunity. Yes, it's tough. Yes, failure can be painful. Failure can be very stressful. But failure is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for growth, for personal growth, organizational growth, society growth. Because failure, to me, is about discovery. It's about discovering who we are, what we do, how the things we are doing work or may not work, the systems we are building, the systems we are interacting with, the organizations we are part of. We can never know everything, and the world around us and the world we inhabit is constantly changing. So failure is about discovery. Because if you're on a path that you know, you're probably on somebody else's path. The path before you, your path, is always unknown. So you cannot, because the path is unknown, you will run into bumps, you will run into issues, things that can be made to look like failures in hindsight. So failing is learning. Failing is an opportunity to learn, and failure brings some of the best lessons, even though those lessons may be painful and may suck. But in hindsight, the lessons are pretty good usually. Adam Savage of Mythbusters fame, he posited something in contrast to people at NASA, for example. People at NASA said failure is not an option. Well, failure is always an option. And even you have to look, well, maybe NASA is not a good example, but if you look at companies like SpaceX or Netflix, or other companies in our industry, but also in aviation and science, they look at experimentation as a way to understand the world that they are in and the products that they are building. So the things that they are doing, yes, a spaceship blowing up can be seen as a failure, but it can also be seen as a learning opportunity. And I think because failure is all around us, we should expect it. As a matter of fact, we should embrace it and start getting good at this failure that's all around us. And the key to that is being able to fail fast. Being able to take small steps and course correcting as you learn about the things you are doing. Fail fast and fail cheaply. Learn to fail with pride. Do fast and do it clean. Mastering trial and error, or maximizing trial and error, rather, by mastering the error part. So doing lots of little experiments, figuring out what's working, what's not working, and continuing on from that. Lots and lots and lots of small steps. And Bob Ross said it the best way. This is the best quote about failure. There are simply no mistakes, just happy little accidents, just little trees appearing here and there. It's just, that's the way he did it. I still miss that man. There are no mistakes, just happy little accidents. Now, the key to remember is, and I think this goes for all of you, we are building complex and distributed systems. Not all of them are distributed, but most of them are. Plus, we are not only building, we are also part of complex distributed systems. Hell, we are. As individuals, we are complex systems. The organizations we inhabit, the world we inhabit, the planet we inhabit, those are all complex and distributed systems. Now, the key thing to know about what is or what makes a system complex is that it is not linear, in the sense that if I have a change in an input, there will not necessarily be a proportional change in an output. The system may appear chaotic or random. A complex system is also not Newtonian in the sense that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. There's a linear sequence of cause and effect, which is the way that Newton saw the world. And complex systems are difficult to break down into components. And specifically, if we do break down a system into its components and we try to reason about the systems as a whole by looking at individual components, that does not work in a complex system. As a matter of fact, a complex system as a whole may not be working, even though all of its constituent components are. And that's the key thing to note. So and that's the Cartesian worldview. Descartes, he said that if we want to look at a human being, for example, and the health and the condition of a human being, we look at its components, which is the body and the mind. So if we look at the body, and the body is okay, and then we look at the mind, and the mind is okay, then we conclude that the human as a whole is okay. We've learned since that the body may be okay, the mind may be okay, but the human as a whole is not doing very well. So Descartes, he said that this is reductionism, essentially. We reduce a system to its component parts, and then we look at the component parts. If the component parts are good, the system is good. This does not hold for complex systems. Complex systems, if we do a change, it's generally not reversible. Who here drinks coffee? Okay, keep your hand up if you take milk in your coffee. Can you undo putting milk in your coffee? No. Unless you're some crazy scientist on a molecular level, you cannot undo adding milk to coffee. And you cannot undo changes in complex systems. You can never cross the same river twice, for you are not the same, and it's not the same river. So as you change a complex system, the system changes around you, and you change with the system. So the change is not reversible. And changes are generally, or actions are generally not repeatable. Conversations I have with you today, if I repeat them tomorrow, it will not be the same conversation. Because it's not the same conditions, and we are not the same people anymore. Now, software development is about creation. Creating things that did not exist before. And creation is learning. If we create something that did not exist before, how can we be expected to know what that thing should be like, what that thing, how that thing should look like? We are creating, so we cannot know. So it's all about learning. And this is where we poke a system to understand a system, especially systems that are running. There are multiple speakers here in this conference that are talking today, tomorrow, about legacy systems. You inherit something that already is working, that's probably making money, but that's difficult to understand. And one of the strategies there is simply to start poking into the system to understand what it's doing and where it's doing. And Dave Farley, of continuous delivery fame, he said, software development is a process of discovery and exploration. And in order to become good at it, we need to become experts at learning. Now, when it comes to failure, I've heard multiple companies, managers, organizations say, well, if only you are more careful. Can you please stop making mistakes? Because they end up costing us money, and if you make fewer mistakes, or ideally no mistakes at all, that would be awesome. If you can just stop making mistakes. Now, that's not helpful, because we're simply human. We make mistakes. Going towards a metric of 0 mistakes per hour or per day is not realistic. Plus, we are in an environment where things are not prescribed, where things are not clear, where things are not known to us. Because to work is to change. We change, our systems change, our colleagues change, our organizations change. So if we really want to blame something, don't blame people making mistakes, blame impermanence. The lack of things, the nature of things not to stay static. Things will not stay static. We are not static, and the world around us isn't. So to work, hence, is to make mistakes. And the dialogue coach of Tony Soprano, well, actually the actor, behind Tony Soprano, she said, in order to create, one has to be willing to miss the mark, and to be willing to be seen as human, right? To understand or discover a character that you're playing as an actor, it's lots and lots and lots of trial and error. It's lots of failures. But in order to create that character, in order to become that character, you have to be willing to experience that trial and error. You have to be willing to experience missing the mark. And that means organizations need to be able to make it safe to fail, right? If you are in an organization and it's not safe to fail, then people will stop doing things. And that means that people in organizations should be able to share stories. Stories about how they are interacting with each other in that organization, the things that they are building, the things that they are experiencing, the emotions that they are experiencing, the stress, the positive feelings, the negative feelings. Of course, they need to share successes, right? The things that we saw a positive outcome, we're super happy with what happened, we're super happy with the money that we earned, we're super happy with the things that we enabled people to do, the customer value that we created, and whatnot. But we also need to be able to share misses and near misses, right? The things that almost went spectacularly wrong, if not for some intervention by somebody, or just random chance. Those stories are super interesting and super important for people to share, for people to learn about their organization and to improve as an organization. And that means making it safe to fail, making it safe to work, means making it safe to learn in an organization. And the key thing here, you are either building a learning organization, you are part of one, or you are losing to someone who is. And I think if you want to have an organization that's resilient to change, to unknowns, that organization needs to be adaptive. It needs to be poised to adapt to the things that may come, the consequences of actions that you take. Right? We continuously change our systems. We think we know how our systems work. We think we know how our platforms work and what their behavior means. And then we start changing something, but those changes can have consequences that we may not have intended. But we need to be able to prepare, or we need to be prepared to deal with those consequences as they appear anyway. And somebody I respect very much in this space is John Allspaw. He did a lot of research and talks about resilience engineering, safety science, adaptive organizations. And his statement is that people are the adaptable element of complex systems. The last line, and in most cases, the only line of defense. So organizations would do well to prepare their people to deal with all of these things that are not knowable. Because, unfortunately, we tend not to rise to the level of our expectations. We tend to fall to the level of our training. And that means that we need to train on experimentation. We need to train on experiencing failures. We need to train on poking our system and dealing with the results. We need to train on doing changes with unintended consequences and dealing with those consequences. That means taking many, many, many small steps, or rather many small experiments. All the things we do should be divided in very small steps so that if we see something that we did not intend, we see a miss or a near miss, we see an outage, we see a problem, we see a failure, we can easily course correct. And that means that, back to the statement I keep uttering to people, and I think Jan was also talking about this earlier, my favorite statement is, if it hurts, do it more often. You will not hear a doctor tell you this. Yet here I am doing that. If you bang your knee, not literally, but if you bang your knee in building software and creating, please do not stop banging your knee. please continue banging your knee so that you get better at the knee banging that's bound to happen. Because we can try to avoid the knee banging, but the knee banging will come at you like a boomerang in the worst possible moment. And it will probably be a lot bigger unless you preempt that by doing lots of small knee banging steps. And the thing is, research has shown that if you do lots and lots and lots of small steps, this actually helps reduce risk, not increase it. Right? On the left side of the picture, you have a release schedule which is infrequent, where we build up risk because we don't release what we are building to production. We are not really realizing customer value. And on the right side, we have smaller steps. We still build up risk, but that risk is substantially reduced because we go to our customer earlier and faster. And so that's the, well, paradox, where you see companies actually reducing their frequency to deploy or release because things go wrong. In reality, this is what you should do. Do it more and smaller and get better at it. Now, in our this day and age, we're in the cloud. Most of us are, or at least some part of us is. Our devices are definitely in the cloud. And the nice thing about the cloud is this is based on commodity hardware, usually. And as Werner Vogel said years ago, everything fails all of the time in the cloud. Expect things to crash. Expect machines to crash, to be destroyed, to stop. And that's where chaos engineering comes in. Chaos engineering is facilitating experiments to uncover systemic weaknesses. It's a system, or rather it's a philosophy, and an engineering discipline that allows you to poke that system, to do those many small steps, to figure out where the weaknesses are in your system, to learn more about your system and your organization as a whole. It's a discipline of experimentation in a distributed system in order to build confidence in the capacity of that system to withstand conditions that are not ideal. And that leads you to the most interesting parts of a system. At least I think the most interesting parts. The things we are aware of but don't understand yet, and the things we are neither aware of nor understand. Chaos engineering is only one of the disciplines that will help you there to figure out the things you do not know about your system or your organization, the things that will blow up in your face unless you preempt it. Now, and tools such as Chaos Monkey are useful there, the Chaos tool set, but it's not about the tool. It's also not about just breaking things. I turn servers off and then everything breaks and that's chaos engineering. It's not. It's also not just about breaking production. Even though that's cool, if you never have done it before, breaking production will probably cause serious waves and will actually stop your chaos experiment. So also there, you start small, many small steps. You do it in your testing environment first, and then you progress to your other environments, if you have them, to get more confidence in how you break the system. Because if you don't schedule maintenance, your system will do it for you. And it will happen at the worst possible time. And that's my TED Talk. Thank you so much. I'll be here the rest of the day and to talk to you about failure. Thanks, ConFoo.